ASA has been out for a while now, and you know, there's a lot of issues with it in terms of the performance category, and I've got 2060 Super, so I'm just going to run you through what a 2060 Super performs like in ASA, and we'll see how it goes. We're not going to do any other resolutions in 1080p if you were wanting any other resolutions. Don't know why I can't change that resolution scale. Either way, essentially we'll do all the presets, and then I'll recommend my settings and some just custom things, and we'll go through like disabling volumetric clouds, all of that. Either way, epic settings is probably not what you're going to want to run on this card. We're getting about 15 frames per second, no DLSS mind you, and the game looks great on these settings, frankly. I enjoy it. But if we turn on, it is already on actually, sorry. We turn it down to performance, which is what I'd run it at. We get like 20 frames per second, pretty much the same actually. That's just when you look out to see, isn't it? Or it might have just updated. Either way, you get like 1 to 2 FPS more. It's negligible. But if we go native, so just DLSS off, I actually find it doesn't look as good as with DLSS on, because there's loads of graininess. You could say it looks a little bit sharper, but there's just loads of grain. And as you can see, 12-13 FPS, and it feels a lot more sluggish than that. And you can see the character there it's got loads of blurring on it, and you don't really get that with DLSS on. But either way, we're not going to be really tampering with DLSS for a little bit. We turn it down to high. I can change the resolution scale on this, but I think we're just going to go default high settings, which is got motion blur on. I will turn it off when in a bit, but this is just default high settings, what you're going to get. It does feel significantly smoother, but I'm going to say that's down to the motion blur, because if I turn that motion blur off, then I think it will feel quite sluggish again. So if you're it feels better. It does feel a little bit better. But also if your frame rate feels really sluggish, motion blur does help out. And if we turn on DLSS performance, I'm not really going to test anything else. I didn't mean to do that. Chuck it on performance. Quality really doesn't do that much, and performance actually looks pretty decent. So especially for a card like this, where we don't have the luxury of like running epic settings, it's definitely worth it. And yeah, it feels smoother again now, and I could kind of play like this. I wouldn't want to, but I kind of could. So if now we whack this thing down to the medium settings, again with that, putting that scale of resolution up to the full, it's not really going to do all too much. Actually, resolution doesn't really change the game's frame rates too much. It kind of does what DLSS does, really. Like you only get like 5 less FPS if you go up to 1440p, which seems frankly crazy, but yeah, medium settings now you can see we're kind of getting there. We're in the low 20s now. I know we haven't really gone anywhere, but you know, we will in a little bit. This Pteranodon is waiting for us. Again, if we turn on DLSS down onto performance, you might be able to get 24. The 31's just false. Yeah, 24. Cinematic frame rates. This actually is now feeling alright. I could quite happily play with this frame rate. Although original Arc runs at 60 FPS, and when I play it like that, it's so much nicer, man. And yeah, then we can obviously take it all the way down to low settings, which is going to require me to go back to the main menu, so wait just a sec. Actually, a good thing about ASA, I will have to say, is the loading times, because they are so minimal compared to the previous game. Partly because I got this one on an NVMe SSD compared to the last one. As you can see now though, with low settings, I know the textures haven't loaded in yet, but this feels really nice. It is in the 40s and it's feeling smooth. It's feeling nice. I'm enjoying this. And I don't know if the textures are, I think they're supposed to look like that. Who knows? The ground will probably appear at some point. These are the low settings, and they actually look good. I could play with them. And then again, if you chuck on DLSS performance, you can really get some performance out of this game in the 50s, like high 40s, 50s. It's good. And if I fly up, I know I haven't done this on any of the other ones because it's not really worth it, but you would be probably playing at these settings. It drops to like low 30s, so this is quite a lot more intensive. Can just catch up though, and then goes up to high 30s. You look at this and it looks good. Would I say it looks better than Ark, like original Ark? Honestly, maybe. I'm not sure. It depends. Like it looks a little bit better, just a little bit. But the real issue now you have is you can see my armor's flashing, and it's because of the distance of view distance. Does it work on tame creatures? It might not. Either way, creatures will look really blocky from really close up, which isn't what you want. But now that we've done that and we've got DLSS performance on, I think it's kind of time to see what settings I would probably run on this thing. But before we do that, I do have to, as always, disable the volumetric clouds, which is r.volumetric cloud 0. I know my Pteranodon is being abused by raptors. No, just come back. Okay, I was kind of getting thrashed there. As you can see, now the game doesn't really have that atmosphere that it did before. It's lacking in it. But when you can get performance out of the game, I don't think people are complaining. And also fog and clouds are bound to one setting now, I think. I'm pretty sure they are. If we disable that as well, we'll just see. It's just the same. R.volumetric fog 0. Oh no, fog is different now. But yeah. It looks quite basic now, you could say. Maybe it doesn't look as good as the original anymore. In terms of like terrain and all of that, it does. But getting an experience like this, it's alright. But the thing is, this is kind of the frame rate which we were already getting without these turned off. So for the purpose of my setup, it does a bit, for sure. Definitely makes the game look very different, but, you know, I'm not sure if it makes the biggest difference for me. But I can see the appeal in it, so if you want to run it like this, you can't quite get 60. Maybe if we chuck it down to ultra performance, or if you chuck it down to a high resolution, lower resolution. We touch 60, 59. My game is capped to 60. There we go. 60 when looking up at the clouds, but now the game does look quite blurry. But if you want a kind of 60-ish experience when looking at the sky, you can kind of get that with DLSS Ultra Performance. Just doesn't really look that good anymore, but does feel smooth. In terms of my settings though, I'm accepting that we're not going to get 60 and keep that up on 100%, and it's going to want me to reload the game, so I will do that briefly again. I'm not obviously going to run default medium settings. That would be useless of me, like completely. Why would I do that? We've gone through the presets, and medium doesn't run particularly well, you could say. And I will do the commands back. Right, this is default medium settings. We're not going to be running, why do I have my inventory? We're not going to be running default medium, obviously. So, custom. You don't really need to do that. It'll do it anyway. Advanced graphics, I'm going to keep on medium. Anti-aliasing, chuck up to epics. Doesn't really make any performance difference. View distance up to high. Textures can stay on high. That can stay like that. General shadows down to low, that on high, and then that on medium. Take these settings and drop all of them down, like that. Don't need footstep particles or decals, they are useless. Fluid interaction you don't need. Low light enhancement you don't really need. Light bloom you don't really need. The shafts look nice, so I do keep them on. It's going to tell me to restart my game, and I will. NVIDIA DLSS on performance. And in the advanced settings, make sure that bubble particle multiplier is always at 0. So we're gonna save it, and we're gonna exit to main menu. Load again, create single player. Obviously, I'm not going to be running on servers. I don't really know what the state of them is at the moment. Most people are playing ASA single player anyway. Either way, yeah. So we've loaded in now. And as you can see, it looks quite nice. And this is how I ran it. So like low 40s, high 30s. Those shadows are off, so yes, it doesn't maybe look the most ASA-y, but it still looks pretty decent to me. And it definitely does look better than the original. A little bit on the blurry side, but I can't really say anything to do that. So yeah, this is how I'd run it. I wouldn't run it differently. But if you did want to know, obviously kind of 30s when you're in the air, I was trying to just keep basically 30 plus all the time. If you do r.volumetric cloud 0, you can get a little bit more. Again, 38 up into the 40s. It's like an extra 10 FPS, and then r.volumetric fog 0 as well. And you get an extra frame, about a frame from that, and it looks like this. So very different, but you get a lot more frame rate in the air, so I guess you could call it worth it. But the experience that I want from ASA isn't this, and I don't have the need to run it like this, so I don't run it like this. I run it with obviously my r.volumetric clouds on 1 and my r.volumetric fog on 1. Fog doesn't really matter as much as clouds, obviously. And if you want even more visuals than that and you care even less, then chuck your general shadows up to high and chuck your global illumination up to epic. And if you really want to go a step further, foliage up to high, and then you'll get a game that looks like this, and it will just be touching 30, and it will look a lot nicer for sure, but it's not quite smooth enough for me. So if you turn the foliage down to medium, it does this, not really that much, and you get a lot more FPS. I don't really recommend foliage on high. You get like an extra couple of frames, and it doesn't really look different. Then if I turn that down, that global illumination quality, again, it doesn't really look all too different, but the frames are significantly higher. And maybe you could actually run it like this. But yeah, having that global illumination on epic, I really don't see why it makes sense. Again, you could enable the water and plant interaction, but it's quite intensive. And then as your last step to get down to where I was, general shadows from low to high, and this does make quite a big graphical difference. As you can see now, it kind of looks a little bit bleaker, but we're in the 40s, because if I do this and put general shadows up to high, again, yeah, now it looks really nice and new ASA, but when I get into the sky, it kind of, it suffers a little bit in a way that I wouldn't like as much. It's so close to 30 and it's dropping to like 24, 25, and that's not what I want. I want to keep it pretty much above 30 at all times, which is why I had those general shadows obviously just off essentially and on low. So yeah, these are my kind of ideal settings for the game. I think they look pretty decent. And obviously 30 odds, 40 odd FPS, not actually that bad. So what do you think of ASO's performance? Comment down below also what you think of these settings. Do you think I've chose the right balance between performance and looks? And if you have ASA, how's it running for you? And I'll see you all later.